Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, the world watched something historic, the way the President of the United States, President Trump, began the process of reconciliation with the leader of North Korea. And the Baal Shem Tov said everything a Jew sees, they have to learn a lesson in the service of Hashem. And especially if you see something so enormous take place on the world stage, everyone has to personalize a message from that, from what they witnessed. Interestingly, this week's Torah portion talks about disputes, it talks about dissension, it talks about strife and quarrels. An individual by the name of Korach amassed 250 people and led a rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership. And he waged a personal attack against Moshe and said, "Why do you elevate yourself above the community? Who are you to appoint yourself a leader and rule over the community?" Now obviously, we just learned recently that Moshe was the humblest person that ever lived. The problem was there's something called projection. We project ourselves onto others. Korach was power hungry, so he viewed Moshe as being power hungry. But what does the Torah tell us about Moshe? He was an Eved Hashem. He was a servant of God. He was the model of a leader as a servant of the people. He doesn't raise himself up high, he raises the people up high. However, Moshe Rabbeinu does something he never does anywhere in the Torah. You always see Moshe praying for the Jewish people. Here, if I could use the metaphor, he goes nuclear. And he says to God, if these people are wrong and I'm right, let the earth open up let the ground open up its mouth and swallow them up alive. You never see Moshe Rabbeinu asking for the destruction of the Jewish people, only in this case. Why? The rabbis say because strife and dissension is so bad, so destructive for a community, that he felt he had to deal with it in a very harsh way. And sure enough, the ground swallowed up Korach and his 250 people. However, the quarrel wasn't over, the rebellion wasn't over. The next morning, the Torah says, the Jewish people said, "Look what you did, Moshe. You killed all these people in such a brutal fashion by swallowing them up alive." And there was more strife in the community. So what does Moshe Rabbeinu do? He says to the leaders of the tribes, everyone put your stick in the tent of meeting. And the next day they went back, and Aaron's stick sprouted almonds, because they had challenged the leadership of Aaron as the high priest, and that proved that Aaron was the one that was intended to be the high priest. And the question is, and that settled the quarrel. Once and for all, there was peace in the community. The question is, an earthquake swallowing up Korach and his people didn't do the trick. A little stick with a few almonds convinced them to make peace. How do we understand that? And why almonds? So one beautiful interpretation is as follows. You ever buy a bag of almonds and you bite a little almond that's not fully developed and it's very bitter in your mouth? Almonds are usually sweet, but before they're developed, they're bitter. So the message about machlokes is that it's a bitter pill to swallow your pride and make peace with someone who's your enemy. But at the end, it turns out very sweet. Like almonds that are bitter in the beginning, yes, it's painful, it's difficult, but the road afterwards is beautiful, pleasant, and peaceful. And therefore, the message of the almonds is that there's no room for strife in the Jewish community. Why? Because it's a bitter experience to live with strife. Yes, you have to swallow your pride, you have to extend your hand, you have to make peace. And it's very difficult to go to war against yourself in order to make peace with another person. But if you do that, you live a life of pleasantness and peacefulness. If you're in a machlokes, if you're in a dispute, you just bring bitterness, constant bitterness upon your own life. And that's why we have to let go of machlokes. And when we watch the way Kim Jong-un is able to make peace with President Trump, North Korea, with America, every person has to say, who in my life am I not living at peace with? If they can do it, what's my excuse? If they could bury the hatchet after 70 years, why can't I bury my hatchet? Why do I have to perpetually live with machlokes? And this week's parsha comes this week to reinforce that message of making peace. You know, there's something called sinat chinam, baseless hatred. And this month we begin the 3 weeks mourning the destruction of the temple. And the question is, why is it called baseless hatred? Ask anyone who hates somebody, is it baseless? They'll give you 10 reasons why they hate the person. Why do we refer to it as baseless hatred? And the rabbis are telling us, whatever you think your reasons is, it's still baseless hatred, because there's no basis, no matter what happened, to hate another person. Even Yosef forgave his brothers and made peace with his brothers. To conclude with a story, there was a father trying to read a newspaper one day, and his little 5-year-old kept on asking questions and disturbing him. So he wanted to keep the kid busy so he could relax. So he saw on one of the pages of the newspaper, there was a picture of a globe. The whole map, the world map. So he took the page out, ripped it into 15 pieces, And he said to this kid, put it together like a puzzle. You figure he'll keep the kid busy for an hour, he'll get to read his newspaper. 5 minutes later, the kid comes back, he finished the whole puzzle. The parents were shocked. What a brilliant child. He put together the whole map of the world in 5 minutes. He said, how did you do that, son? He said, I'll show you. He had taped it all together. He showed him that on the other side of the map of the newspaper was a picture of two people embracing. He said, I just put together the map of the picture of the two people, and the whole world, the globe, came together. We look at the world conflicts, and we have to realize it all comes down to individuals. When two people make peace, and it starts in our own lives, ultimately we create a world where we have shalom, the most prayed for word in our daily prayers.